I was quite curious to ask Jen, how did she actually start writing? Generally speaking, not just for this series, but how did you start writing, Jen?
I've been an avid reader all of my life, and I don't know if you've ever heard, there's this writing, it's not really a contest, except it's a challenge, a writing challenge called the National Writing Month, so Nawomi. And a friend of mine sort of challenged me to join in. And so I did that. It's a month in November where you write. And so I set a goal to write every day. It's the first time I had ever done that. And I was writing, and I would have to report to my friend who is a published author, Jill Miles. I don't know, maybe if you've heard of her. She writes like paranormal romance fiction, really a great author. And so I would report into her every day that I wrote. And then at the end of the month, I had about 50,000 words of what would become my first book, Undeclared. And it was terrible. Like at the end, it was just 50,000 words. It wasn't really a story. It was like pieces of a story, and I had no ending. And I just kind of let it sit there. And a few months later, my friend came to me and she's like, where's your book? And I'm like, what do you mean, where's my book? And she said, you wrote all these words and you didn't finish your book? And I said, no, I haven't looked at it in like 3 months. And so she said, you're going to finish that book and I'm going to help you. And so every day then I would have to report to her and I finished it with her encouragement. And then once I had that book done, I hired an editor and we worked on improving the book. And I had another story idea. And my friend says to me, you're a writer now. If you have more stories and you finish this book and you're a writer now. And so that's how I started writing. And a lot of people will email me or tell me at a signing that they have interest in writing. And my response to them is always, you should start today. Start with a daily goal. And maybe your daily goal is only 100 words. But if you write every day 100 words, you'll have a story in no time. And so I just encourage people to write every day, whether it's in a notes application or in a journal. Writing every day. Writing is like a muscle. You need to work it out on a regular basis, and it gets stronger the more that you do it.
Yeah, I think this makes a lot of sense. Actually, I'm familiar with NaNoWriMo. Back when I was a member of Love Journal, when there was like a super huge community of fanfickers and also people who wrote original fiction, all of us would like to join NaNoWriMo, but as you said, it was super difficult because you really had to write every day and you really had to somehow finish, or at least try to finish and get to your goal. And it's great that in the end you found support and you found people who wanted to be there for you, because I really, really believe that that's one of the most important things when you are a writer. And I wanted to ask you, first of all, you became a published author on your own, if I'm not mistaken, and only after that you met with Elle and you decided to write which will become the Royals, or what's the story behind this meeting of yours?
So Elle and I had been friends for a long time, and she's a terrific author on her own. And we were exchanging emails one day about, wouldn't it be fun to write a story together? It was, I think when we started writing together, there was kind of like many authors were collaborating together, and we were talking about, hey, wouldn't it be fun if we collaborated together? And I had this idea of writing kind of a Cinderella-ish story. And she said that she loved Gossip Girls, that television series, which I had actually never seen. And she said, what if we wrote a story like Gossip Girls, about these crazy young adults? And it kind of just evolved from there. Like, we were emailing back and forth with each other about different ideas, and we came up with this idea about our heroine in how she would be thrust into this unfamiliar situation with people who hated her. You know, I think when the whole plot, the whole kind of setup is that she goes to this place and no one likes her. So I think a lot of times you always see a girl in a situation and she's immediately liked by the hero. And that's not the story we wanted to write, even though those are wonderful stories. And I love those stories. I love like the love at first sight sort of stories. This was just not one of them. And so it was a lot of fun to write her and the brothers, the Royal brothers. And when you write with someone, and I miss writing with Elle and I miss writing with other people, because you write to impress them. So like, you write your chapter and you want that other person to gasp when they read it. And so I think that that's one of the reasons why this series was so lively, is because we were really trying to write for each other and to excite the other person.
Actually, it sounds like a very nice thing to, I don't know, just correspond with somebody, and when they see your parts, just, you know, surprise them and make them feel like, okay, now I really have to be somehow worthy and somehow I don't know, to be even a better person, a better writer myself. So this is how you actually worked? You just emailed each other, or how did you do it? Like bits and pieces, or somebody did the characters and somebody did the narration, or how does this work actually?
We just wrote one chapter after the other. And I think that, you know, I've gone back to read Paper Princess, and which was the first that we wrote together, and it feels so seamless. Like, it doesn't feel like two people are writing it, because we both had the same vision for the character, and we were both able to articulate her and the other characters, obviously, in a similar fashion. So I know that, like, with other authors who collaborate, like, one person will write the heroine's point of view and one will write the hero point of view. But obviously in this case, since we were in Paper Princess, at least, there's only one point of view. It's just her point of view. We were writing that character together. And so I would write a chapter and send it off to her, and then she would write a chapter and send it off to me. And most of it was done via email. We would chat, you know, we would text each other about ideas if we got stuck. But a lot of the, I think, magic happened because we were surprising each other. And so I think that was something special there. After we were done with Paper Princess, though, we had to meet and plan the rest of the series, because it required more than writing on the fly. You know, we had all these characters we had to move around, and we had a greater plot that we had to fit in. And so after we wrote Paper Princess, which actually only took us 5 weeks to write, 6 weeks, it was super fast. We met and plotted things out. Like, we actually met in London for a writer's retreat to plot out the last 2 books. So or the last three after Broken Prince, we got together and said, okay, let's plot the rest of the series out. And we took a little trip for ourselves and did that. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I can actually imagine. And I confess that I've always been fascinated exactly by this, because as you mentioned before, there are a lot of authors, and I think especially in this young adult, maybe, or younger audiences genre, I think there's a lot of them working together, as you said. And I think that's very important, because I think when you're just one person, maybe you just tend to start somehow sliding into into a routine maybe. And it's nice to have somebody to just give you a push every now and then. So I really, really like this, the way you talked about it. And I also like your Gossip Girl reference, because I've seen Gossip Girl, and that was quite a nice series back in its time. So now that I think about the books compared to it, I just think you girls have really nailed it. I'll just take a small break to tell everybody who has in the meanwhile joined us in this chat room that it's perfectly fine to ask your own questions. This is why Jen is here with us. And if you want to ask something, just kindly raise your hands, either by showing it or by using the Zoom option, or by signaling in chat that you would like to ask a question. If you cannot use your microphone for any reasons, then just write your question in the chat room and I will just read it. So whenever you feel like joining in and asking Jen questions, please do. So do not let me have my own curiosities for the rest of our meeting. Good. So don't forget to ask questions. And in the meanwhile, I will just have one more for Jen and ask her, because I've read on the internet that you also have a family and you also have other obligations to tend to. I'm curious, how does this work with your career as a writer, and how do you manage to juggle with all of this?
Well, I feel like my family is not a distraction. They're actually very helpful. My daughter is older, and so she really takes care of herself. And my husband is super helpful and allows me to write. So I do have a full-time job. I'm a lawyer in my real life. And so I will write. I have specific blocks of time that I write. I write early in the morning. Sometimes I'll write at lunch if I'm inspired. And then I write a couple hours at night. And then on the weekends. So, I have to be efficient during those times because I don't have a lot of time. So when I'm not writing, I'm thinking about what I'm going to write. And so when I sit down actually at the keyboard, I have my ideas and I know where I'm going to go in this particular scene.
So you actually have another job besides writing. So you're still a lawyer as well. Wow. And this still works for you.
So far, I know writing can be, so Elle and I wrote, I think it was like 8 books in a period of 4 years or 3 years. It was a lot of books in a very short period of time. And I got burned out. I couldn't write anymore. And I kind of took a break from writing. And I just actually recently published a duology, which was the first things that I wrote after taking the break with Elle. So writing is pretty hard. And I think if I had to live off my writing, it would make it even harder. So it's important for me to keep my lawyering job so that my writing is still a passion and not a job for me. I feel like my creativity is better when it's not under that pressure.
Yeah, I think it actually makes sense, and I think it's also maybe wise to have a plan B, just in case somehow, and you can just convert from one to another. Because you mentioned that you also write on your own, so as an independent author. I wanted to tell you that sadly I haven't read your independent books so far, but now they're on my list because I've seen some very interesting stuff over there, and I really liked the fact that you were trying to explore somehow the Korean culture and to delve into this heritage that you have. And you also said that you wanted to have something like a touch of K-dramas, and I really like that. And I was thinking maybe while the people also prepare their questions, hopefully let's encourage them. Yay, people, you can do this. So I just wanted to ask you, how have you decided to write about this? So to have a, how should I call it, a touch of Korea in your books?
Well, like I said, I was kind of creatively drained after writing the Erin Watt books with Elle, and so I needed to take a break. And I don't know, are there any BTS fans here? So I actually got into BTS through my Erin Watt series. Someone had told me that the series reminded her of this K-drama called Boys Over Flowers, which is a really famous K-drama. And so I went and watched it, and I could see the similarities, and I had never seen it before. And I started to really get into K-dramas and K-culture after that, even though I am Korean. I grew up in the Midwest, which is, if you can envision the giant United States, I'm like in the middle, and there's really nothing, there's no other Koreans in this area, very, very few. And so I didn't have any kind of cultural references. And when BTS blew up in the US, you started seeing Korean things everywhere. They really elevated Korean culture all over the world, and in the US too. And I started thinking about my own experiences as an adoptee, and I watched more K-dramas, and I went to an editor friend of mine and I said, I have this idea about this Korean adoptee who goes to Seoul to find her birth father, but instead falls in love with her stepbrother. What do you think of this? And she's like, well, you should write that. And so I wrote this story and I sent it to her, and she's like, I love it, I'll publish it. It ended up being 2 books because I couldn't tell the love story and the family story in one. And so the first one is called Heart and Soul, and the second one is called Soulmates. And I'll be right back. I have to show this. So these 2 books were just published. This one just came out. This is the second book, Soulmates, this year. And this is the first one, Heart and Soul. I don't think it's sold yet in Romania, but maybe you can still buy it off of Amazon. But I have to show this because it's like now my prized possession. But this is a paper cut of my book cover. And this is how the cover was made. So I don't know if you can see like the 3D of it, how it's, I just love this. So this is the train car, and this is the Seoul, and this is the Namsun cable car. And then it has the little temples. And so it's just a really lovely treasure of mine. So
really
the other
looks amazing.
Yeah, so the other backstory behind the covers for Erin Watt series is my husband drew those.
Really?
Yeah, because we were looking on like stock photos for covers, because Elle and I actually self-published the series initially. And so we did all of the work ourselves and getting the covers and stuff. And I didn't find anything that I really liked. And so I asked my husband, who is an artist, to, he's like a sketcher. And if he would do that. And so he actually drew all of those. And then a friend of ours did the overlays and the designs and stuff.
Oh, you learn something new every day. So this is a very nice piece of information. And also what you just showed us looks really, really nice. By what I know so far, I mean, I haven't heard about it being in translation in Romanian, your duology, but it's pretty newish, so probably there hasn't been a discussion about it because of that. But I've noticed it, as you said, around the internet. So I'm really curious to see if we're going to take it as well. And I just wanted to say that in the meanwhile, I think Alexia here with us gathered up some courage, and she would like to ask you some questions. And I will leave the floor.
Hi. So when I read the Royal series, was a hard time for me. I was having exams, and instead of studying, I read the series because I love it, and I was really happy. And was this scene in the first book that I remember when Elle was working at the club, and Callum was there. And he called her to his table, and that scene. How came the idea of him saying, to do her job if she doesn't want to talk with him?
We wanted to make Ella as like a really strong character. So, and she had to be to survive on her own like that. And so it made sense for her to push back against Callum, even though, if she wanted a better tip, she probably should have been nicer. But, she lived a hard life, and she didn't want to be a victim, right? I think that's what we liked about Ella for the series, is that she didn't allow herself to be victimized. She wanted to be the protagonist and be the one to make things happen instead of allow things to happen to her. Even though she was in these negative circumstances, she was trying to make the best of that world. So I guess that's kind of the mindset that we had when we were writing her.
And somehow in the future will be a continuation of the series, or maybe with them like grown-ups.
We do get a lot of questions about that, and we get a lot of questions about the twins, whether their story will ever be written. And I would never say never, but we don't have any plans for it right now.
And do you have any wait a second, I forgot the word. Any things to say for young writers?
Yes, I think that you should be brave in your writing. And what I mean by that is that it's easy to let other people's thoughts creep into your mind. So you're writing a scene and you have a dialogue, or you have a particular scene that you're thinking about writing, and then you're about to put it down on the paper, but another voice in your head says, oh, I just don't know if that's a very good idea, or I don't know if a reader would like that. You should just write it anyway. It's so much easier to go back in your writing and say, okay, I don't like this scene, and take it out, or maybe we should change this scene, or I don't like how the character reacted, let's change how she reacted, than to not have anything to go back to. So my advice is to write unafraid. You can always change it later. Write only the scenes that are interesting to you. This is actually one of the best pieces of writing advice I ever got. Nalini Singh. Nalini Singh gave me this piece of advice. She said that I said, I'm having such a hard time writing when my character gets done in one scene and then going to another scene. It's so boring. And she's like, you don't write those boring scenes. If you're bored, your reader will be bored. Just write the exciting stuff. And then you can go back and you can fill in, the bridge between those two scenes. And it might only be a paragraph. So for new writers, I would say, write a little bit every day. Write only the stuff that you think is exciting. Don't be afraid to write. Don't write from a point of fear or worry about what other people are going to think. Right now, it's just for you. And let's see, what else would I say? You don't have to write like anybody else writes. So I say, I write with an outline. I actually don't write with an outline. But some people write with an outline. Some people write on the seat of their pants. But there is no one way to write. You should just do it whatever way feels right to you.
And I have one more question. And how do you think that it's more simple to write with someone, like how you wrote The Royals, together with another author, or alone to write a book?
I think it's, when you write with someone else, obviously you have to compromise, right? Your vision of the story has to align with that other person's vision, and when you clash, then someone has to give. So there's good points and bad points for writing alone versus collaborating. I loved collaborating with Elle, and I actually also wrote with another author. I think it's just a really joyous experience, because your writing can be very lonely, and you think, oh, I don't know if this piece is good, or I don't know if I'm going in the right direction. And to have someone who's intimately involved in that writing process and knows where your story is going is really encouraging. But there are some stories only you can tell. Like the stories that I just wrote, the Heart and Soul and Soulmates, those are stories about a Korean adoptee in Seoul. And none of my friends could write that story with me. That was just a story I could write. And there are some stories that are just yours, and you want to write those by yourself. I think it's really great that people can have that option, to write by themselves or to write with someone else. And that's, the benefit of pen names is, Elle and I were able to write together under this one pen name, Erin Watt, and have a particular identity. And she writes on her own under Elle Kennedy, and I write under my own name, under Jen Frederick. And so there's a lot of freedom in that. And I would say to you, Alexia, if you have a friend that you want to write with, you should write with that person. But you should also always write on your own, so that you can pursue your own stories that you feel might be unique to yourself.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alexa, very much for your questions. And I will use this as a reminder to anyone else who has joined us in the meanwhile, that in order to ask Jen Frederick here a question, they just need to raise their hands or to signal in chat that they would like to ask a question, or to write the question directly in the chat room so that I can voice it for them. Just so that we're sure. So please feel free to let me know. We have around almost 30 minutes left, so do profit as long as you can, because we're not going to have Jen here with us for the whole evening. Where she is now, it's the day it's just started, so she has probably a lot of other things to do. And speaking of which, I wanted to ask you, Jen, because I'm really, really curious, how does a normal day in your life look like?
Well, COVID has changed a lot of things. So I work from home some of the days of the week instead of going into my office. And so my schedule can be a little less rigid than it used to be in the past, which is helpful because sometimes you don't always feel like writing at 6 in the morning or at 7 at night. So I guess a typical day is just getting up, and another piece of advice that was given to me is that when you finish writing at the end of the day, kind of leave yourself a note as to where you want to go for the next day. And that's really helpful because it's hard to sit down and write with no idea what you're going to write about. And so some days I might just think about what I'm going to write in the morning. So I might have a cup of tea and think about what my characters are going to do that day in the book, or what is their emotional status and where do I need to go. And then I'll take notes. I might even jot down like some dialogue. And I do most of my writing at night. So in the morning, if I have a really good idea, I might write, but a lot of times it's just like planning. And then I'll go to work, and then when I come home at night after dinner, I'll sit down and kind of look at my notes and start writing. And I usually try to write in about a 2-hour block. And sometimes I get 500 words in, and sometimes I get 2,000 words in those 2 hours, but it's more like 500. But that's kind of how it is.
It does sound, as you said, not as rigid, but it also seems to me that it involves a certain amount of planning. So you kept mentioning that you need to plan a bit, you need to plan in advance, you need to write in blocks and all that. So at least to me, this seems that it might be a creative thing to do, writing, but it also needs to have some discipline. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, finishing a book, it takes a lot of effort, and you do need to be disciplined. I think anybody can write, a little bit here and a little bit there, but the real accomplishment is finishing, and it's hard to finish. It took me a long time to finish, and I would not have done it had it not been for the encouragement and really the pushing of one of my friends. And so but once you do finish, there's just such an elated feeling, and that you can really do anything. And so if you can, finding a writing community, an online writing community or in-person writing community is really helpful. Because like I said before, writing can be a very lonely experience. And without encouragement, I think it's hard to do.
Yeah, it just occurs to me because I'm actually a book translator, and usually when I get into the acknowledgement part, more often than not, especially in the last years, most of the acknowledgements go to this smaller or bigger circle of, writing buddies, of people who supported the process, who encouraged the writer to go through it, who served as beta readers or as a larger community with whom they sort of shared ideas. So to me, it seems that writing still is a solitary process as you described it. But on the other hand, I think it needs a community. It needs to be supported. It needs to be encouraged, to have fan art to inspire writers, to have fan vids, to have conventions where you guys can go and have signings and talks and all these kind of things. So to me, it seems that the relation between writer and readers has changed a lot recently. Like, it's not that the writer sits somewhere in an ivory tower and writes and then just spreads books to the people, but they sort of are part of the community. So I don't know, what's your take on this thing? How do you feel it as a writer?
Definitely. I feel like without readers, what are we doing here? When I write my stories, I do write them for myself. I write the story that is inside of me. But when you get emails from people who say, this really touched me, or Alexia saying that she couldn't stop reading it even though she was supposed to be studying, that's really encouraging to hear. And it makes you feel better when you go to write your stories. And when you're alone in front of your computer, you can remember those encouraging words and persevere through your through the process. So those are, the readers are a hugely important part of the community. Obviously, we wouldn't have a community without readers.
Meanwhile, I will try again to see if there is anyone else gathered a bit of courage to also ask a question or to say anything directly to Jen. So if somebody decided in the meanwhile that they would like to ask something or to tell Jen something, I think this would be a very good idea. Maybe. Oh, that's good. I can talk to Jennifer for the rest of the evening. There's no problem for me. Because I heard that there is somebody who might have a question. No, not yet. You're not ready yet?
No, I'm not ready yet.
Okay, so we'll leave Diana to prepare her questions. Maybe just 2 minutes more, Diana. Okay. And I will use this time to ask something else. And my new question is, if you have like a very, very nice memory from when you met fans or readers or somebody who really, really liked what you're doing, and if you can share this with us.
I had a signing in Italy a couple years ago, pre-COVID. It's hard, these years are running together. I think it was in 2018. And everyone there was just so lovely. I don't speak any Italian, and I don't speak Romanian. So it's really touching that you would read my books, even if they weren't translated. I had people come with the English versions to be signed and said that they had read those first before they were translated into their native tongue. And just that the effort that you all make to communicate with us when we're not writing in your native tongue and we're not speaking your language, that is, I don't think any person would not acknowledge how special that is. And I'm actually learning Korean right now, and it's very challenging. And so any polylingual person is immediately elevated in my eyes. You're all so amazing for being able to speak more than one language. And you definitely do not get enough credit for that. It's remarkable. And I just remembered when I was in Italy and all of these fans being speaking a little bit of English to communicate with me, and it was just really precious. And just like all of you today, listening to me speak in English and not asking me to speak your native tongue is very honoring. And I appreciate it so much that you would allow that to happen. So I think that that's one of my best memories. And this will be another one of those really wonderful memories about how accepting you are of people who don't speak your language, and how you've made this enormous effort to communicate with me. And I really appreciate that.
We also appreciate the fact that you are here with us. And I think this is something that we need to be grateful to, because we keep mentioning that it's been hard for us during the last 2 years. And I completely agree that COVID and everything changed our lives maybe forever. But on the other hand, it's great that we do have technology and we do have this opportunity to connect with each other and to be able to speak to you and to other authors and to other creators, because otherwise it would be quite difficult to imagine. At least when I was younger and I started to read fantasy and YA and science fiction and all that, I could only dream to meet the authors. Whereas in the last 10, maybe 15 years, I've just started to gradually meet them, sometimes physically as well, but most of the times online. And I really appreciate that we do have this means of communication. So it's great to have it. I'll just profit to ask again if maybe somebody has thought of some questions or anything else that you would like to share with Jen, since she will be here with us for maybe a quarter of an hour more. So we do really, really need to profit. So I don't know. Anyone?
Hi.
Hi, you're back, Diana. Very nice to have you again. Please.
Yeah, sorry, my brain isn't really able to speak English today, so if what I'm saying doesn't make sense, I'm really sorry. But what I wanted to say is that I read the paper Princess some time ago, and I still think about how strong Elle was, and I was curious, how did you come up to write her?
Thank you, Deanna. And your English is perfect. So when Elle and I wrote this character, we thought that she had to be very strong because her mother passed and she was alone and she had no money, and the only recourse she had was an unfortunate one. And when she was taken then from her surroundings and placed in front of these 5 very surly young men, it would have been easy to make her cower and be pushed around, but we didn't think that that would be as entertaining. And so it was really important for us to make her a strong character who would try to make the best of her situations. And because Gossip Girl is really over the top, and the Paper Princess series is like a soap opera, and so there are some over the top elements, like her being a teenage stripper was an over the top element, and then having these 5 boys is an over the top element. But we tried to make it also grounded by making Ella as relatable as possible. So, you know, every person goes through those experiences where they're not where we call it the fish out of water. Have you heard of that saying before? where they don't feel like they belong. I mean, we all have those experiences where we go somewhere and we feel odd and that we don't belong in that environment. And how do we respond? The dream is that we respond with confidence, but oftentimes in reality, we kind of shrink down. And so when you write, you kind of want to write that idealized character, right? Like we want to be the strong character, and sometimes we don't always portray ourselves like that in real life. But when we're writing the story, we can write her as strong as possible. And I think that's part of the fun of writing.
Thank you very much. It was a really good choice to make her like being at the top. It made the book really interesting.
Thank you. She's a very fun person to write. That type of character is fun to write.
How does this actually work for you guys? Like, because you're saying that she's a very fun character to write, and she's a bit over the top, and she goes beyond like the usual kind of girl, let's say. And do you still lend your characters a bit of yourselves, or a bit of your friends, or a bit of your relatives? How does this work? Like do you base your characters on real persons?
I mean, yes and no. I think that as a person, you can't help but allow experiences, your own experiences, to influence your writing. But we do try to craft characters that are wholly their own and not based on anybody but their own character. And I think girls are strong, and that sometimes we don't realize how strong we really are. And that put in those circumstances, given the right surroundings, we would rise to the occasion too. And so Ella isn't necessarily the idealized girl, but actually maybe the combination of all girls that would in those circumstances. You know, I think we're more outspoken and strong than ever before. Like this generation of girls is so impressive. I look at my own daughter and think of, I wish I had her confidence when I was her age. So I feel like this next generation of girls is just amazing.
Here we are, the next generation of girls. Andrea, I think you just raised your hand, so if you would like to ask a question, please do.
Hello. First of all, I wanted to say that you are very beautiful. And I'm very curious, what books do you read?
I read a lot of different books. So I read romance books and I read mysteries. Lately, I've read some nonfiction books because I'm trying to write some action scenes for an upcoming story, and I'm not very good at that. So I've been reading kind of some craft books on how to write and write these scenes that I'm not particularly used to. A friend of mine, Christina Lauren, just finished a book that's coming out in May, and Something Wilder, and I just finished reading that. It's so much fun. It's kind of like an adventure romance. So I always enjoy those, and they're very funny. You know, those two are that Christina Lauren is a collaboration. That's two women who write, and so it's fun to read their books because I know them and know how their process goes. What else have I read lately? I've been actually watching a lot of Korean dramas, so that's kind of taking up some of my time too. But and also I was rereading some old historical romances because Bridgerton was kind of feeding my historical romance itch. And so I was reading Lisa Kleypas. I don't know if you're familiar with her. she writes historical romances. And so I was reading that, the Winterborn series.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
Thank you as well, Andrea, for joining us with a question. And thank you, Jen, for sharing a bit of bookish recommendations as well. And I was just curious to ask you very quickly, beside K-dramas, what else do you like to watch? Do you also watch movies maybe, or just TV series?
So I'm trying to learn Korean, and so I watch a lot of Korean dramas to help me with my language skills. So I primarily watch those. I'm trying to think, what's the last movie? Because, you know, I haven't been to movies because of COVID. And even though the restrictions have been lifted, I'm still a little leery about going to movie theaters. And so much stuff is online. So the last movie, I watched the Eternals. I watched the Eternals on HBO. And then, did I see anything else? I think that's the last movie I've watched, but I have watched a lot of dramas.
Did I approved that the last movie you've watched is a Marvel movie? Great, great choice, because I'm a Marvel girl through and through, so I approve.
Have you all seen Doctor Strange? Then I haven't seen it because I haven't gone to the theater.
I actually did, because I went to one of those press releases. It was last week. I was just talking to some friends about it, and I really found it quite entertaining. So if you have the opportunity, go see it or find it online or however it works, because it was brilliant. It's very relaxing to watch it, and it has great cinematography and great music as well. So I do recommend it a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I miss the movie theater popcorn though, so I probably need to go soon.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I've been a bit worried to go to cinemas and public places myself, but I'm one of those persons who just like quickly eats the whole popcorn box and then puts the mask back on. And this is how I roll. So for like maybe 20 minutes, I just eat popcorn very fast, and then I put the mask back on, and then I'm fine and I can rest assured. And so far I've been COVID free, so it seems like a good, yeah, it's a good strategy. So I highly recommend it. I just wanted to say that, guys, we have around 5-6 minutes left with Jen. I know that time flies when we're having fun, and for myself, I've been having a lot of fun. So if in the meanwhile you wanted to not necessarily ask her a question, but tell her something or recommend her something to read, something to watch, something to get inspiration from, this is the moment to do so. So I think that you won't be having this opportunity to talk to her in the near future, and maybe just profit a bit and let her know something that you would like to tell her. Don't be shy. Everything is okay. So you can definitely tell her what you
I would
have in
love to
mind.
hear recommendations from readers, whether it's books you've read or movies you've watched that you think would be you'd love to share. I'd love to hear that.
Come on, guys, let's do a quick round and see how this goes with Rex, or anything that you've read or listened to or watched. I just said that because Jen asked. I've recently seen Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. It's a really good movie. Even if you are not definitely a Marvel fan, it's a good movie. But if you're not a Marvel fan, then it's going to be very mind-blowing to go and watch it. But it's still a good and entertaining thing, so watch it. So if anyone else has something to recommend to Jen, to watch, to read, to listen to eat, Okay. So there is a recommendation in the chat. Thank you, Sorina. That's actually a book I translated into Romanian. It's called The White Elm. It's written by Tina French. She's an Irish author and she writes murder mysteries, but this one is a psychological one. So it's like a very nice description of a descent into madness. It's a quite good one. I would also second this as a reading. Thank you so
I'm
much.
taking notes as we talk. So
thank you.
keep on
Alexia.
coming.
Something similar with the Royals. It's The Inheritance Game by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I love the series. And there is a book that is supposed to coming out this year, and it's my own book.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's named The 12 Lotus.
The 12 waters or daughters?
No, lotus, like the plant. Like
Oh, okay. Lotus.
yes.
And is it by Alexia? Or do you have a different writing name?
It's Alexa NC.
Well, congratulations. When does it come out?
I think in summer, but I'm not sure with the date yet, but it will be in summer.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Congrats, Alexia, and thank you very much for your recs. Anyone else would have something for Jen? She's taking notes.
Do you like mythology? Or do you hear me?
I heard mycology.
Mythology, like if you like the subject. So, well, because I would recommend you to watch God of Zeus because it's the last show I watched and I really liked it.
I think it's on Netflix, right, Diana?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll look it up.
And it's an animation, right?
Yep.
Uh-huh. Okay, this sounds quite cool.
Well, my daughter is watching that Family Spy anime. Have you heard of that?
I think so. I didn't watch it, but the name sounds familiar.
Yes, it does. I don't know. Is it with girls that spy or something like that?
Yeah, it's about and I want to start watching it, but it's about I think he's a secret agent, and I think he might be he's a spy, and he has to infiltrate the school, but he needs a kid to get into the school. So he goes to adopt this girl, and this girl is like 6 years old, but she can read minds. And so she knows exactly what he wants because she can read his mind. And so he picks her, but he also needs a wife for some reason. And so he, with this girl's help, unknowingly, because no one knows that she can read minds, he picks this woman who actually is an assassin. And so she knows that her adoptive mom is an assassin and her dad's the spy. And sometimes she'll read minds, but she will read the wrong mind, someone who has the wrong information, and they'll get them all in trouble. It's the way that my daughter was describing it was very funny, but it's an anime. Yeah, I think it's called Family Spy X. I think that's the name of it.
Like Sorina just wrote, I think it sounds quite awesome as a plot. So definitely we're going to put it on our watch list as well. Yeah. Sometimes I think kids and teens watch things that are very, very nice, and we should watch them more often ourselves. So definitely.
Yeah, it sounds super fun. Oh, Oh, I've seen that. That's on Netflix, or it was on Netflix like a couple years ago. I loved it. I love the animation, the art style of it. I thought it was really like when she skips across the lake, or yeah, I just thought that was really lovely.
It's awesome. It still is on Netflix.
Okay.
Okay, so I can still watch it.
I really enjoyed that one. Yeah. I don't know where this Family Spy X is showing. I think she watches it on Crunchyroll. So I don't know where it would show in your region or whether you have access to that.
We'll look it up, definitely.
Okay.
Now that you praised it a lot. Okay. If there are no more recs and no more questions and nothing else, and since it's already 8:30 here and we sort of reached the hour when we are supposed to finish this chat, I just want to say that I'm really sorry that we have to end this, because I was just getting started, warming up a bit with recs and all that. But I wanted to say that I'm super grateful, Jen, that you took the time to join us for this small talk, and that you answered our questions and you recommended stuff to us and you listened to our recommendations. And I still believe that we are very lucky that we can have this kind of talks with writers overseas that we enjoy reading, be it in English or in Romanian. And I just want to say thank you in everybody's name, and to tell you that we'll be looking forward and hope that your duology will also be translated into Romanian quite soon. So thank you, Jen, for everything.
Thank you. It was really an honor. Thank you so much. You're all so lovely. Thank you for having me. Have a good evening. Have a good sleep.
Yeah, you yourself have a good day, Jen. Thank you very much for coming.
Bye-bye.
See you.